In this section, we'll discuss special education's procedural safeguards and parent rights. A few upcoming key terms to watch out for. Procedural safeguards are rules on what the school can and can't do when assessing your child and when providing special education. Informed consent refers to parents signing an agreement after completely understanding decisions about their child. Revoked consent is when you take back your consent if you change your mind. Prior written notice is a notification to parents in writing before the district can start, stop, or change anything on the IEP. Assessments are tests to figure out your child's current abilities and difficulties in areas of concern. The IDEA provides legal protections to you and your child called procedural safeguards. Procedural safeguards say what the school can and can't do when assessing your child and when providing special education services to your child. Procedural safeguards describe your rights as well as your child's rights. When you receive this notice of procedural safeguards, take time to read the safeguards carefully. Although it's a lot of information, it's complex, the information will help you navigate the special education system. Keep the document, add it to your file of your child's information. You can refer to it as often as you need, and as you go through the special education process, you can refer to any relevant sections as necessary. Always know that you can ask questions from the district staff, the SELPA, or other resources to explain anything you don't understand. There are 11 procedural safeguards in special education. In this video, we'll cover 8 out of 11 and then cover the rest, the other 3 in other videos. It is a very complicated process. It's a very complicated document. Just know that you don't have to take it all in at once. You can replay any sections as you need it. The 8 procedural safeguards covered in this video are written notice, parent participation in IEP, parent consent, access to educational records, assessment, prior written notice, independent educational evaluation, surrogate parent appointments. And the other 3 covered in other videos are resolving disputes, school disciplinary procedures, and private school. Written notice of procedural safeguards must be provided the first time your child's referred for special education assessment, and each time you're given an assessment plan to sign for your child, upon receiving the first state or due process complaint in a school year. Also, when a discipline decision is made to remove your child from class, causing a change in placement, and anytime you ask for a copy. Parent participation in IEP decision-making. As the person who knows your child best, IDEA requires that parents take part in making IEP decisions. You have the right to participate in the IEP team meetings held on a mutually agreed upon date, to participate in the development of the IEP, to audio tape the IEP team meetings after giving a 24-hour notice to the district IEP team members, or not consent to recording if the district wishes to record an IEP meeting. You also have a right to bring anyone to an IEP meeting that you feel can support you and your child. Parent consent on assessments. You must give informed written consent before your child's first special education assessment can begin. Informed consent means you can ask questions until you fully understand the assessments that would be given to your child before signing the consent. The districts request you return the signed assessment plan within 15 days if you agree and consent. The assessment cannot begin until the district receives the signed assessment plan from the parents. Then the assessments must be completed by the district, and the eligibility meeting should be held within 60 days from the date the school receives the parent written consent. Parent consent to services. You must give informed written consent before your school district can provide services. If a change in services is recommended in the future, your informed written consent is then again required before the change can start. There's no deadline for your signed consent for your services. However, initial services will not start and changes to future services will not happen without your signed consent. So what if you don't consent? If you don't provide written consent for an initial assessment, the school district may pursue an evaluation by using mediation or by taking legal steps. If you don't consent in writing to start the initial IEP services, the school district will not provide special education services and will not seek legal steps. If you consent in writing to some special education services for your child, but don't consent to all parts of the IEP, the parts you have consented to must be implemented right away. If you don't consent to reevaluation of your child, the school district may use mediation or legal steps to reevaluate without your consent. The school district must make reasonable efforts to obtain your consent, though. Can you revoke your consent? Yes, you can change your mind. You can decide not to continue special education services, or you can revoke your consent in writing. The school will double check with you, and then they will process and services will stop. If you revoke consent to special education services, the school is not required to provide special education services to your child, but must provide you with written notice before they stop services. They're not required to hold an IEP team meeting, develop an IEP, or offer FAPE, or free and appropriate public education. They're not required to remove references to special education in your child's educational record, or they're not required to follow the special education procedural safeguards anymore. If you then later decide that your child needs special education, you will have to start the referral process with a written request again. The timelines for initial IEP assessment and meeting will then start from the beginning. Assessment. You have a right to have your child assessed in all areas of suspected disability. Assessment materials and procedures must not be racially, culturally, or sexually discriminatory. Tests and materials must be provided in a language or communication mode that your child understands. Assessments must be in a form most likely to get correct information on what the child knows and can do academically, developmentally, and functionally, unless it's clearly not possible to do so. No single test or procedure can decide if your child is eligible for special education services or be used in developing FAPE for them. Access to educational records. You have a right to inspect, review, and receive copies of all your child's educational records when you request them. The school district has to provide access to records or copies within 5 business days after the request is received. Although oral requests are honored, district prefers written requests. Providing requests in writing allows you to better manage your copies of your child's records and requests. Prior written notice, or PWN. You must be notified in writing by the school district when they propose or refuse to start or change the eligibility, services, or placement of your child. When proposing assessments of your child, an assessment plan within 15 days of receiving your written request for evaluation will be provided. Prior written notice is also required before the action being proposed or refused happens. PWN can be provided in an IEP since in California, no action is taken until written parent consent is given. PWN must be in a language or mode of communication you understand unless clearly not possible to do so. Independent Educational Evaluation, or IEE. If you disagree with the results of a district's assessment, You have the right to ask for an IEE at district's expense. An IEE is a second assessment completed by an assessor outside the district. The school district must respond to your request for an IEE. You are entitled to one IEE at district's expense each time the district conducts an evaluation with which you disagree. You have the right to select your own assessor that meets district's policy criteria. The district can help you find an IEE assessor. If the district believes an IEE is unnecessary, it must request a due process hearing to prove its assessment was appropriate. Or if the district wins, you still have the right to an independent assessment, but then at your own cost. The IEP team must consider all independent assessments completed by assessors that meet district's criteria, whether paid by you or by the district. Surrogate parent appointment. If a parent can't be identified or located, the school district must ensure that someone is assigned to act as a representative for a child when a parent can't be identified or located, when the child is an unaccompanied homeless youth, or when the child is an adjusted dependent or ward of the court who has an IEP or is referred to special education. Remember that we covered 8 out of 11 procedural safeguards in this video. As I mentioned before, it's a very complicated document. It's a lot of information to take in, and we've covered a lot in this video. You can always go back to it and refer to the parts that you need, and the other 3 will be covered in other videos.